Hi everyone, happy How To Festival. My name is Krystal. I am the library assistant and supervisor at the Mira Mesa branch library, and I run our idea center. So what we're going to be learning about today is how to repair books that have taken damage at home using items you already have on hand. Materials that you'll need for this video include some form of paperback or hardback book that has spine damage. So this is your spine, or that has cover damage. I'll tell you how to fix those, how to make them last for as long as possible. You're going to need some form of writing implement, be it a pen, pencil, anything you need. You're going to need spare cloth, anything that you have on hand. We don't want something as thick as, say, a towel or a rag, because we need glue to be able to fuse through this. So it has to be a light material. You also need a cutting implement. Now that can be anywhere from a box cutter to a craft knife to some form of scissors. Okay, whatever you've got on hand. Kitchen knives work just as well. You just need it to be sharp. If you are a child and you are working on this, or a juvenile, teen, whatever, make sure that you have an adult on hand in case you need first aid. You're also going to need some form of craft glue. Now, we do not want two types of glue for this. The first type of glue that we absolutely do not want you to use, unless you have nothing else, is going to be some sort of washable school glue. So think Elmer's glue sticks. Absolutely not. They are not sticky enough for this. You will need liquid glue. School glue like this is meant to be washable, so it will fall apart when it rains. And if we're trying to repair books with the goal of never needing to fix them again, it's not going to be great if they fall apart in the rain. So what you want instead is some form of craft glue. So tacky glue, Mod Podge, anything that dries clear or white and lasts for a long time is what you want. The other type of glue you do not want is an instant adhesive glue. So this is Permabond. It's an instant adhesive. It will always say instant adhesive somewhere on the label. Other examples are Crazy Glue, Gorilla Glue, things like that. We need something that takes longer to dry. We don't want something instant because it will dry before you can actually fix your book. So just keep that in mind, okay? Last but not least, you're going to need some form of light cardboard. Now that can either be a plate, like a paper plate. It could be something similar to a mac and cheese box, a cereal box. So what I have on hand is actually a cereal box that I've gone ahead and cut out. You can see I've fixed another book with this. It's important that it be thin, that it be something that can fold. You do not want to use corrugated cardboard, which is what you normally see for packages. If that's all you have on hand, you can still use it, but you're going to have to cut through that corrugation, open both parts of the cardboard, and then glue it down in place with something heavy on top of it for at least 24 hours before you repair any books with it. That's important. It has to glue for at least 24 hours because that means it actually sets through with everything else. With that said, we're going to go on to hardback books first, and then we'll move on to paperback books. So I've gone ahead and gotten a hardback book that we can't accept as a donation for a couple of reasons. One, it's too damaged. Two, it's out of date. And three, it is a textbook. We don't generally accept textbooks as donations in the library, but we're going to fix it up today before it ends up in the recycling bin. So the problem with this book is there is some spine damage that you can see. So it's starting to tear apart on the outside. We're going to fix that today. And the other part we're going to fix is the spine itself is starting to come apart. So if you go, you see here, we're able to see the spine. And thankfully the glue's not come apart in certain ways, but this is something that we're going to have to fix and address. The first thing we're going to have to do is we're going to need to separate the spine from the backing of the book. Now, I understand it might be upsetting for some of you to see me damage a book, but understand that this is for the purpose of repairing it, and this is something that was going to be recycled anyway. So that's why we're okay with doing this today. So this is where you need something sharp. I'm going to be using a box cutter today. Now keep in mind, you always cut away from yourself. So for this instance, I will get this up along into the edge as best as I can, and I'll be cutting downward, which is away from my hand. You're going to line this up at the top, press this up against the back of the paper so that it cuts nice and cleanly down. You don't want to cut into the actual paper itself. So I am trying to make this is the reason why you don't do it like this, because it's harder to see. Now that we've got this down all the way, this is going to crack open. And you can see there's some threading in here. That's why fabric is involved. There's also additional pieces of what's called book board, which is like a light piece of cardboard involved in making the spine of this book, because this is a larger book. So now that we've got the spine completely detached from the back of the book, we can start gluing. So when you are gluing books to fix them, two things to keep in mind. You do need a lot of glue. If you only have a little bit of glue, wait until you can get some more. Because if you only have a little bit of glue when you start this process, you're going to have to repair it again in the future. So I'm going to set this down so I can work on this a little bit better, and I'll show you what I've done once I pick it up again. But we'll talk as we do this. So the library uses something called book glue. I know this isn't an Elmer's container, but it's only because we buy this in bulk and we needed smaller containers to be able to work with. So this is book glue. This is an archive safe. So that means that it's low acid. The reason why it's low acid is because if you apply glue that's too acidic to books, it will break down the spine of the book and the paper over time. And that leads for us to not have these books in the future. That's the reason why we use book glue. Any sort of craft glue is normally low acidity, so that's the reason why I recommended craft glue. Apply the glue to the spine. You want a nice even coating. You want all of the edges. Try not to get it to overlap on the sides if you can. If a little overlaps, that's okay, because again, we're working with something that dries white or clear. If the inside of the cover is not salvageable, you can replace that with any type of cardstock or similar type paper. And because that's normally what we use in the publishing industry anyway. So I've got glue on the spine, and now I need to apply it to the book itself. So when I say I have applied it to the spine, you see this book board here, but I've not applied any to this portion of the spine. You need glue on both places, and we're going to put fabric in between to help bond this better. I'm going to set the book up on its side. I'll try to do this where you guys can see, and hopefully this will show up well. This is not the way that you should do this at home, but again, I'm just trying to help you see what I'm doing. So we're going down around the outline of the book itself first, and then we're going to go across. And so when you move upward, again, we want more glue rather than less, because if we don't have enough glue the first time we do this, we're going to have to come back and do it again eventually. And we don't want to have to keep repairing the book. The more times you have to cut it open, the more times you have to come in and apply things to this, the more likelihood it's going to disintegrate. So the least amount of times we can do this, the better. So you can see that this has gone around the sides. Now the important part here is, because this is a larger hardback book, it needs something to help reinforce the spine. That's what some of this fabric was over here. It's hard to see it. And if you have something like embroidery mesh, you can use this. This would work better than most fabrics because it's stronger. But I'm going to assume most of us don't have this on hand. In that case, you can use a used pillow cloth, or pillowcase, excuse me. the cloth from a pillowcase. This is just some basic broadcloth that we had for a craft and we had left over. So what I'm going to be doing is applying the broadcloth to the back of the spine of where the book is, and then we're going to fuse everything together. So it's important that you have cloth overhanging. If you're sensitive to having sticky things on your fingers, I do recommend wearing gloves for this portion of fixing the book, because ideally you're using a fabric that is so thin that the glue is going to permeate through this, okay? And if the cloth overlaps in the middle, that's okay. Thankfully, this one is long enough that it's not going to overlap very much. But I do want it hanging over the side, because then I can cut off any excess and be sure that I've gotten as much covered of the spine as possible. So because there is a seam in the middle here where the two pieces were, I'm going to apply some extra glue. Now normally, if I was doing this for a library book, I would be using specific library book tape, but we're using what we have on hand, which is why we're using fabric today. So normally, once I apply fabric, I want this to stay and set for at least 30 seconds, okay? But since we're running on a time limit here, we're gonna go ahead and press this together. So you're going to put this standing up, wrap your cover around and over. Now you want this to sit as firmly as possible and as evenly as possible. So you're going to push down on the top of the book. To ensure that everything is straight and flush, always check your side, pull your fabric up so you can see. So you can see that this is sitting level, it's not skewed, it's not bent, so it's not like this. And that is what I want. I want this to be as flush as possible. If you have binder clips, those are clips that look kind of like this and open like an alligator's mouth, now is the best time to use this to secure the book end. If you have clamps, that's even better. But I'm going to assume not everyone has those. So the best thing you can do for this, when you're letting this set, you want it to stay for at least 24 hours to give the glue time to permeate through everything and set. So you're going to stand your book up like this. You're going to put you want gravity to help you with this. So you're going to have your book set like this. So just let this sit for 24 hours and then we'll show you how to fix the rest of the cover. So we're continuing on to learning how to fix paperback books rather than hardback books. So I want to show you some examples of previously home repaired paperback books so you can see some of the options that are available to you, and then we'll go ahead and repair one that we have on hand. So this book had some pretty severe spine damage. We couldn't accept it as a donation to the collection for a number of reasons, but I want to point this out because this person did a wonderful job actually taking clear tape and taking what is a very thin paperback book and reinforcing it similar to the way that we would do here at the library, not with tape, but with other options. Now, as we talked about before, we have book tape and spine tape and a couple of other options that we can use. But clear packing tape will work really well with what you have at home. The other thing that I want to point out is you can see this white portion here on the spine. So this is actually embroidery thread where someone has taken an awl, which is basically like a nice ice pick with a very sturdy handle that's used often in leatherworking and sometimes in book repair, classically in book repair, to punch holes and then sew the spine together. So this is an older way of putting spines together that when a paperback spine is deteriorating, you can kind of see here, if I zoom in a little, that there is basically just a little piece of paper holding the spine together that's just glued in place. So they've reinforced it not only with this clear tape, but they also went and used this thread after they punched a hole in to hold the portion in the margins together. And for preparing our books at home, that's a great way of doing it. Now, another example of how you can basically reinforce books that you need to use. This is one that I previously had repaired. So you can see that there was some significant spine damage. And what I did is I took the thin cardboard from a cereal box and basically glued it together to the front and back covers of this book. And when so the spine itself was fine. It's just where the cover attached. So I went ahead and reinforced that cover. And if I was taking the real time to go through and fix all of this, I would probably also do the similar issue of taking tape all the way around to reinforce this really well. Or if I had the materials at home, basically there is a plastic where you can turn paperback books into something that functions more like a hardback book, but we're working with what we have, so clear packing tape is your best bet, or book tape. Now this is a perfectly usable copy of a school book. Unfortunately, this is one that we couldn't take because there's marginalia in all of it, which is cool for me as a historian because there's an entire study devoted to what people noted in books. And this is also a great way to study for your AP exams or anything like that. So if it is your own book, it is actually helpful to write in the margins and things like that. And you'll see a lot of people in college and in upper level education who will do this. This is a book that we have a lot of copies of. And we don't need another copy of The Lord of the Flies that has damage. So, this book is mostly okay, but I want to show you that there's the beginning of some spine damage here. You can see that it started to get worn and wrinkly. And so we're just going to take book tape and repair the outside of this. Now remember, if you're at home, you're going to be using packing tape, and that's going to be the best way that you can fix it. The other issue with this book is that the cover is starting to disintegrate a little bit. So what we're going to do is reinforce this with tape as well to hold this together, because the only issue with the cover is that it's not adhering to the spine. And if your spine is falling apart on your book to the point where the actual pages of the book are coming apart, this paper spine is not worth saving. The best thing you can do is to take cardstock or take some heavy, light cardboard is better, and glue that to the outside. And basically what you'll do is you'll take off your cover, because your cover should be coming off at that point anyway. The best way to take off a cover, if you have a box cutter that you can just slide in between this section, that's going to be your best bet. If you don't, you can always take a pair of scissors, open your book out to where you can see this lined up flush, and then we're going to cut down as close as you can get, because you want to leave as much of this spine intact and as much of the cover intact as possible. With the scissors, I've caused some small damage here. You can see that this page is falling apart. So this page is actually not super necessary, but in the instance that it were something that we wanted to keep, don't freak out. The reason why is even just having a little bit of damage like this, so you can take cardstock, and the other thing is you can reinforce this page using your clear tape. So with our clear tape, we're just going to apply what we can here. So I've gotten this as flush up against here as I can, and we're just going to wrap this around the spine. Don't try and set it on the other page yet. You just want to set it on the spine first and press out all the air bubbles until this sits as flat as possible. So we're still leaving the other side open. And then we're going to preserve that spine by putting it down on that first page again. Now, because this spine doesn't have nearly as much damage, we are preserving it. If need be, this is where you create a new cover page. So I do not have cardstock on hand, but we're going to use some extra long, oh, I lied, this is cardstock. Some extra long paper here. So ours is white, and there is enough of this that I can completely wrap it around the book. We're going to create a new inside barrier for this. The easiest way to do this at home, you're going to want your pen or your pencil, and you're going to trace the actual spine of this book because we need to cut it to size. Now, if it overhangs a little bit when you cut it, that's okay. We can always trim excess, but we cannot go back and add more. So it's one of those situations, measure twice, cut as many times as you need to. Now that I've got the spine measured, I need to lay the book flat on one of those sections where the spine is, and then trace the rest of the book. So what I'm saying, and I'll show you in a second, is that I need to give it enough space that it wraps around, and then I'll repeat on the other side. Now, your lines don't have to be perfect, especially if you're using pencil, which I do recommend using pencil so you can erase if need be. But anything that you really, really don't like, what you can always do once you cut it, if you're using pen, flip it upside down, so then whatever you do ends up getting pasted to the cover and no one ever has to know your sins. So, when you're done tracing, it should look something like this. So you have your spine in the middle, and then you have the actual length of the cover. So you need there to be all of these sides together as far as possible. Then we're going to cut. And what I like doing is similar to sewing, where I'm going to cut and give myself a little bit of a margin. So what this means is I'm not going to cut exactly on the line. I'm going to cut about 1 millimeter on top of it. If you want to go ahead and measure that out using your ruler or something else on hand, even just the side of the book, again, that is perfectly fine. But the point of this is, like I said, we can't go back and make it larger. So we always want to start with something a little larger if possible, and then cut it down to size after this is glued and taped in place. Now that this is cut, I want you to know, so I used pen, that's what I had, and if I wanted this to look as nice as possible, this would be the side that I'm gluing, okay? So what that means is this nice, blank, pretty side is what's going to be showing outward. So that means when I take this book, I apply it so that this lined up side is on the outside. So when it wraps around, this also helps me line up and make sure that everything is in place where it should be. So it's a little easier if you do it this way rather than trying to get it put together. So let me take a second to fold this in place, get our creases in, go back over the creases if you need to. If you have trouble getting creases to lay flat, what I recommend doing, fold it by itself along the crease, especially if you're using like cardboard, this can be helpful. So fold it along the crease by itself, and then you're going to go over that again with your thumb. So I'll show you the difference between the two sides in 1 second. So the first crease that I've done that I haven't reinforced, you can see it's very wrinkly. It's not very nice and neat. This is the one I reinforced. So if you want a nice set crease, fold it down by itself and redo it. So we're going to do that on this other side as well. So that way it fits as snug as it can to that spine and fixes that book. So now I've created effectively, my own inner cover. Okay? Now, some of you might be thinking, but wait a minute. If this is going over the book, what's going to happen when that spine faces outward? Great question. Here's the deal. This is just what gets glued in place. Obviously, this is not going to tell you what the book is. This is your opportunity to make an outside portion that you will later glue on that has a new title cover for this spine. Okay, this is where you get to be creative. If you don't care that this is showing, you don't have to pay attention to the rest of this. If you feel that you're not creative enough to get the spine fixed and nice and pretty in a different manner, try and save it with tape as much as you can. Okay? Just to show you both options. If I was gluing this so the spine has no obvious damage, this would be this way. If I want to make my nice new spine creatively on my own or with my kids, then the inside cover pages will have my writing, which means you will see this on the spine. Okay? Next step you're going to do, you're going to tape the spine down, you're going to glue the spine down the same way we've been doing with everything else. And then later, you're going to go ahead and tape this cover back in place. So you're going to glue it down. You're going to let it sit for a day with something heavy on top of it. Let everything build in place the same way that we did with the hardback books. And then once it's fully dry, you can go back, you can cut any stuff that's left overhanging, and then just to make it as safe as possible, that's when you're going to apply tape around all of your covers. Okay? So just repeat the process with the tape as much as possible to just reinforce things as best you can. And when you're done, you'll end up with something that looks closer to this. And this will last you for a very, 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 very long time. Now, I do recommend trying to do this only with books that you can't get replacements of, that ones that have sentimental value. If you're really, really attached to something, try and get it repaired by someone who mends books, if possible. And just try and keep your books as safe as you can. So I hope this helps. I hope that this has taught you that you can repair books of your own at home using materials that you have on hand. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. And we hope to see you at the library sometime soon. Happy How To Festival. Bye.